Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I'm, of course, Nick Medaniel, and as always, I'm joined by Meta Myron.
I am the exhausted man from the Sudan. How was your Christmas, Nick?
Crazy and hectic as always, man. Crazy and hectic as always. Believe it or not, though, we're done. We've already got it all down and put away.
And a wonderful 39th birthday again.
Yeah.
Okay. Hell, our shit's still up. I haven't even started thinking about taking down. I even have you done the assemble the presents yet for adult presents? I don't mean adult presents. I mean presents for adults.
Doesn't have any that needed to be put together, so.
Because I got to put together a new home stereo system for upstairs. I've got, if anyone's a handyman, let me know. I need somebody to change some light bulbs and a ceiling fan and a high ceiling because I'm not getting my fat ass up on a ladder.
You know what I have? I have one of those tools that you have like a little suction thing on the end that you can extend out.
Yeah, I can do that, but I can't. It's one of those ceiling fans. It's a poor design for fat people. But good God Almighty, I'm exhausted. Oh, and we went to the botanical gardens last night. I walked around all over the place, and it was lovely. Atlanta Botanical Gardens. I would recommend it to everyone. But I had a great time. Had a great Christmas. Family did well. Um, and it's good to be. It's good to be with everyone when they're happy. But
I'm
it was a good
Scrooge
Christmas.
McDuck. I'm ready. It's over.
I'm glad it's over, but I'm exhausted. Good God Almighty. But
Yeah,
Merry
I
Christmas,
agree.
friends, family. You're all our friends.
Whatever, whenever, whatever you celebrate, however you celebrate, happy holidays, all that good stuff. Merry Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, all of it, all the above. But look, man, it's now we got all the pleasantries out of the way. It was now we're gonna get into this episode, and we're really gonna talk about the year.
Yes.
The year as a whole.
Interesting.
Yeah, year in review. But before we do that, we also want to remind you, man, make sure you're checking out youtube.com. The at Tapped Out Pods, the handle there. All that good stuff. But because look, we talked about doing something on the show. We may release it later. There's a superlative thing. I'm going to put that over on our YouTube channel and on our Patreon page. Don't forget patreon.com. Tapped Out Pod is that's the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast if you search for it. Look, you get the show early if you're a member. You get all that good stuff, but make sure on the YouTube channel, not only are you liking the page, but you're turning your notifications on, subscribing, all that good stuff. I had somebody was like, man, I'm not getting my notifications, and they double checked, and you know why? Because they didn't have it on. That happens sometimes if you don't have it turned on.
Amateurs. You got to get that stuff clicked, folks. Click, click. Enjoy us all.
Exactly, man. Well, hey, let's get right into it. We're going to talk a little bit about the year in review as a whole. Look, we're not going to go through every little thing. These were the things that stood out to us more than anything. That's kind of what we kind of want to say. Like, this is the stuff that stood out to us specifically. Look, we'll start, of course, look, contrary to popular belief, the big dog in the woods is WWE. Right? It just is.
Always will be, folks.
Look, first. Yeah.
Was it first?
It wasn't the first, but my
then
thing
now
is, look,
forever. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, they're the top of the food chain, and they're a long way off from not being top of the food chain. Look, could they fall someday? Maybe, but that's a whole different story. And one of the reasons, like we say this right, is that one of the big stories. Obviously, Vince had to step away at the end of the prior year, but Vince managed to return to power. He assumed back his control. He kind of fought his way back in. Stephanie kind of assured us all, like, look, it's the status quo. Nothing's really going to change. And, she resigned because she had been put in power. She had been put in as that position while he had been pushed away because all of the scandals. But little did we know, think about that. Like, by Mania season, the bomb drops that, you could say Vince sold it. There's the merger, call it what you will. As on my note sheet, it says WWE plus UFC equals TKO.
It's a big deal. That's a fancy equation, Nick. And it's going to mean a whole lot of things. We were talking about this earlier. They're listing Wrestler of the Year, Most Improved Wrestler of the Year, Breakout Wrestler of the Year on ESPN. And it's like, Well, they're WE people, and you're like, well, they're in bed with them because of the TKO. Well, yeah, because now they have all the power. ESPN can't shit on WWE because if they shit on WWE, they shit on UFC. If they lose UFC, they lose all this other swag.
Well,
This
I
is
don't know
a
if it's they won't. I'm not saying they won't shit on them if it's warranted. I just think from the aspect of, they anybody's not dumb. If there's something to be gained there, they're gonna butter that bread a little bit, and buttering WWE, to keep, because they are, I mean, literally, like ESPN Plus, the app that's where you get your UFC fights.
yep.
So it kind of, I think that's the big reason why. But look, it was like, I would argue, and I think I would be pretty. I think it's a pretty good argument. Agree or disagree that Vince finally selling / merging WWE is probably, well, no, I would still argue it's the biggest story in pro wrestling history.
Easily the biggest story in pro wrestling history because he formed the biggest power block in pro wrestling history. It made wrestling more than wrestling. It made wrestling sports power entertainment. It made it just. How did you get bigger? How could you get bigger, Nick?
I don't know that you could get any bigger than that. That's the issue. That's the largest issue. I agree 100%. The story just is so massive. Look, I think there were some really big stories otherwise, but look, I would have argued that when Vince went public, that at that point that was the biggest story in the wrestling business.
Yes.
And now the merger hence pushes it even to larger scales as well. Look, it's not going to be all business talk. Obviously, we're going to get into some of the wrestling, and one of my opinion, the prior year, obviously, Cody coming over was a massive deal.
Oh wow!
But early in the year, I thought like the biggest story, because there were still talks of this all the way through, like now, like Cody wins the Rumble, everybody's just all in an assumption he's going to defeat Roman at Mania.
Oh yeah,
and he doesn't. He falls short. And the wrestling world just was like split about should he or should he have not won and should he have not defeated him. But we're talking about it at the end of the year, by the way.
We're not going to see anyone defeat Roman anytime soon. And if they plan on having Cody defeat Roman, they're going to put it on pause and have somebody else face Roman at WrestleMania this year because they're going to give him that Hogan number. They're going to get Hogan off the books. Now that Hogan's on the Lamb's Book of Life, they're going to take him in the thermos and write it off the WWE record books. He's already got his place somewhere else. It's folks, they don't want these names on there anymore. They want to start a new thing. They'll never get Bruno, but it's time to erase some things. They erased the Honky Tonk Man. They erased a few other names with some more modern names. They're not going to take Roman out. They're going to let Roman run until he gets that.
You really don't
number.
think so? You really don't think that you think they're going to, because it's what he's got to get to Rumble of 2025 to beat the Hogan number.
He'll get there.
Even with the rumors of his health.
Doesn't matter. Dude, they'll hide him off TV. They'll hide him. It's not even, it's the Universal Championship, right? It's not the WWE Championship. WWE Championship's on Raw. They don't need it for SmackDown. SmackDown's the better show, even with the title not there. Okay? They're doing a great program with no champion there except once every 2-3 months.
Was it Booker's T take that he still said Roman Reigns was the MVP even with a limited appearance, because even when he wasn't on TV, the story still revolved around him and they were still talking about it even though he wasn't there.
You got Paul, okay? You got Jay on another program, but still factoring in. You got Jimmy. You got Solo. The dynamic is still there revolving around Roman, still dicking every storyline.
I just think this is the year, though. I think, because here's the thing. As hot as this story was, and this is going to flow into part 2 of my next point, right? Sami Zayn, at the beginning of the year, turns on the Bloodline and literally hit his peak. That I would argue, by the way, I would argue that the Bloodline storyline peaked from that Sami turn to the Cody loss. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's lost steam. Well, hold on. Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I'm saying. If it peaked there, I think that was its peak. I think we're kind of on the back end and the closing out the story, and that's why I think Cody does win this year, because I don't know that you can get it back to that fever pitch that it was at that point.
I think if they get the booking machine behind it, it will go right back to where it is. The thing was, Sammy was the charismatic. Sammy was the likable figure behind it. Sammy was the lighter our truth in the Judgment Day. Look at it. You got Jay now in that dynamic. You're going to see the Judgment Day falling apart. You're going to see things going back. You're going to see dynamics and drama. Not Judgment Day. You're going to see the Bloodline dynamics and drama. Maybe it'll turn on Roman. Maybe I'm wrong about the whole thing with Roman making it. But whatever happens, they're going to make it into a big deal, and they're going to draw it out and make it the greatest storyline they have running all year. They're going to book this over, and they're going to make it. And if Roman has to leave because he's unhealthy, they're going to make it into something huge before he leaves.
I still think now, with the rumors of The Rock coming to Elimination Chamber, I think we are heading down that path. I think we get to.
So in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've announced Rock's going to be there.
You talk about padding some stuff, a show that's already apparently going to be hotter than hell, and you're going to add The Rock to it. Woo!
Yeah, I just think that it's time for maybe his Rock gives him his come to Jesus, at that Elimination Chamber, and that leads to Cody finally dethroning him and so forth and so on.
How about a face turn? What if Roman turns face?
He's got to lose first. I think he's got to be beaten to turn.
The Bloodline will turn on Roman.
I mean, Solo can turn, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying that's not how you get the loss at Mania. I just think that's what happens.
I'm writing fan fiction.
Look, we're talking, international shows, and I think one of the things that happened this year, by the way, they had backlash in Puerto Rico. Bad Bunny, basically, and Damian Priest absolutely tore the house down. It was a massive home run of a show. The crowd was crazy. It was a great presentation on Peacock. I think too, that was I'm not saying I think this was a part of testing the waters and starting to see. That's why we now have the UK shows, the Australia shows, the Germany shows. This was testing the waters, and I think it showed that the international PLEs. By the way, I don't necessarily love it in the sense of I don't sit there and watch them live anyway, so I don't give a shit if it happens at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Nope. Find the audience. Find out what they want. Give it to them. Secede. If you already have a monopoly with your American audience, pretty much, you've given them what they've wanted for this long. The only way to expand and continue to do better, find new markets. Find what they want. Give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
You have Hispanic stars. You have Hispanic market. You give them something they want to see. You have a German star now.
I don't even know that it's the wrestler that matters. I think they want WWE so bad. Because look, let's be blunt. It has been this way for a long time in the WWE, in my opinion. I'm going to specify there. And I would argue, by the way, it's beginning to work its way down tiers at AEW, indie wrestling, and so forth and so down. That WWE is all about the brand, those three letters, WWE. WWE's coming. Think about it. WWE's coming to Germany. We have no clue who's wrestling on that card, and it's selling tickets like crazy. I mean, look, and kudos to them. I will tip my cap. AEW went to London. It did crazy. We'll discuss that here in a little bit as well. But that's kind of my point. I think they realized, by the way, that backlash, the thing that made it such a win was the crowd, reaction and behavior, whereas you could have did it in some random, U.S. city and had a mediocre or above average crowd where you went to somewhere that was just dying of thirst for the show and they were just bananas the whole show. So I think that's what the PLE, and I think this might have been that turning point of where we hit that accelerator and go full steam with them. So,
and I think that led into the main spike behind the Judgment Day. You got an amazing mix of wrestlers. You got the hottest women's champion they've had in a long time. I think Rhea Ripley's probably the best women's champion they've had outside of Charlotte Flair. You got the biggest heel with Dirty Dom. You got the biggest badass with Damian Priest. Finn Balor, who everybody loved so much when he was a babyface, so they hate him so much when he was a heel. That new guy. And then you got R-Truth, which, God almighty, I can't get enough R-Truth, Nick. I never have been able to.
So here's where I'm here. I do want to ask you this, because there is a part of me that's partially torn. The Judgment Day had been built such as monsters and this heel group that was just absolutely, tearing through everybody. They were taking losses every now and then, but they were still getting the best of people from week in and week out, it felt like. The R-Truth stuff, who we all know, like I'm a massive R-Truth fan, and I think the comedy as well. I worry about if it's not done correctly that it can damage the Judgment Day, but so far so good. I think they've done a pretty good job up to now. So they're, that's.
I think it'll end. It'll either split things up, or it will either make them the absolute worst heels, evil, 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 bad people, and more hated. Because if they were starting to become softer, this will make them more hated. But it was so funny seeing them start to like break up when R-Truth was in the ring the other day. God, that guy's so good. Hall of Famer, instant Hall of Famer,
100%. Speaking of another guy that I think is going to be a Hall of Famer, he's been there a minute, but quietly through 2023, Logan Paul, like he's as good. He is really good at wrestling people. And I mean, and that really pisses some people off that he's just naturally that gifted.
You're going to get yourself in the hated podcaster Hall of Fame with that take. And I'm going to be right there with you, Nick. I can't help it. You're 100% right. You couldn't be more right.
So
proficient.
My evidence stands 100% on this. Randy Orton did a podcast a couple weeks ago, maybe. And he actually he was on Logan Paul's podcast. Jesus. And he actually said the moment he met him and he knew he belonged there was that Rey Mysterio spot. If Randy Orton is telling the world Logan Paul saved Rey Mysterio and he was the natural gift ability to know, you know what I mean? Like what to do, like he belonged. Look, what do we always say? Randy Orton's the most naturally gifted wrestler that I've seen since Barry Windham.
Yeah.
If he's giving kudos and props to Logan Paul, okay, I think my stances are pretty well defended at that point.
So the voices in his head said Logan Paul was the guy.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, damn.
The other big news. Look, NXT and Dynamite had been finally separated by nights. They ended up because of Dynamite getting shoved to a Tuesday. They loaded up their card. WWE loaded up their card on NXT. And NXT gets a head-to-head win. Here's the thing. The story of it is, that they get to pick up the win. They do the million, blah, 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 whatever. And just Tony Khan just couldn't help himself but to, he just couldn't help himself but to get on the Twitter and basically make up every excuse. And here's the crazy thing. All of his complaints were legit. Everything he said was legit, like arguments. We were on a different night than our normal night, so our crowd didn't know. They had John Cena and The Undertaker on there, and on and on. LA Knight. They had all these reasons that they, and look, he was correct. It was just a bad look. Take the L and move on.
They have to get his social media away from him if they're ever going to be truly successful. Vince McMahon never went on. Well, there wasn't social media. Let me take that back. Okay. Even if there'd have been social media back during the day, when Vince was the little guy, Nick, and he was competing against all these bigger wrestling companies. he would have never gone on social media and let them see his weakness. And Tony can't continue to do that.
Mm.
You can't continue to do that. You have to always look like the guy that beats you because they're the strongest, and you're the one that's coming back, and you're gonna get them.
No, look, and I think we agree on the ending point, but maybe the reasoning's different. And I just mean from the thing of take the L and move on. Quit looking like a bitch on social media and just move
Exactly.
on. I mean, I tell people
Exactly.
all the time, listen, and I say this with all due respect to everybody that's on social media most of the time. Um, People were like, "Oh, well, this guy took a shot. I have to respond." Tony Khan, you don't have to respond. Just fucking ignore him and move on.
Yes.
I'm like, it
Don't.
doesn't matter if the person doesn't affect you, just fucking move on. It's not that big a deal. But anyway,
Well, that's that's
uh,
that's that's the whole Gary Lamb concept I tell people about. I love Gary. Don't get me wrong, but if you let him know he bothers you,
Wally,
he'll bother you.
right?
If
Anyway,
if you open the door, he'll come in.
mm. So speaking of coming in, there's we had the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Strike.
That was a
So
budge. Ooh.
John Cena, The Rock, they both come back, make appearances and returns. Look, over the years, there's lots of things I like about The Rock. There are. But in hindsight, in history, I'm thinking John Cena appreciates wrestling more than The Rock. He comes back,
Yes.
and think about it. He helps some people along his back
Yes.
when he comes back.
Yes. Yes.
Rock comes out, cuts a promo, and poof. Cena's
John
coming back and taking losses.
John Cena may be the most gracious and appreciative human being ever to walk the face of this earth. You remember how many Make a Wishes they've said he did? Still no proof because no one's ever seen him. But the stories are he's done so many Make a Wishes. He's done so many. How can you not? I mean, there's one person on earth that doesn't appreciate him, and that's Nikki Bella. Okay, seriously. That's the only person on earth that doesn't think John Cena is the greatest human being there is.
I mean,
He's done more for the wrestling business, and he continues to do all these great things for the wrestling business because the wrestling business did a lot for him. The Rock is a great person, and I admire The Rock all the time, but John Cena will always be my hero because John Cena knows where his bread was buttered. John Cena will do decent. Oh, I hope he comes back as Peacemaker.
I'm sure he will. They got to. I'm hoping, at some point. But um, the other, kind of last right here at the end of the year, they announced SmackDown's got a big deal. It's coming back to USA. Look, we don't know about Raw yet, but we know NXT's going to CW. I mean, I didn't see that one coming. I wouldn't have had that on my bingo card, as they say. But CW's clearly making a run at some type, sports and things like that. So
Yeah.
kudos to them, man.
I
I'm
think
like, all right.
sports programming, even sports entertainment programming, is becoming more and more valuable because it's original. Every time is original, and it's becoming much more
I
valuable
think
to networks.
the value's there because it's one of the few things, and wrestling's not even immune to it. I sent a thing in our little group text. I don't know if you saw that about just the different, and it was NBA versus NFL, but that wasn't my
Yes.
point. My point was NFL. On Christmas, over 21, almost 22 million people watched football that day, and I'm like, it's because look, people. There's some things you have to see live.
Yeah.
Look, I get it, and it's we're just so busy that wrestling's not one of those things for me. It should be, but it's just
Not
not.
anymore. No.
But for a lot of people, it is because they don't want to get the spoilers. And look, and I'm that way with sports. If I'm not watching a game, once it's over, I don't ever. We literally have a friend of ours who will go back and watch Georgia games after they're over, and I'm like, why?
No.
They're over. I know the score. Nothing's going to surprise me at that point.
I watched SmackDown yesterday, and that was a pre-taped SmackDown. But I will tell you, I really enjoyed it. Okay, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that pre-taped SmackDown on Tuesday following that because I like wrestling, and I honestly like doing things my way and watching things at my leisure. and wrestling tends to fall under that way for me.
I do them because we can zip to commercials, etc., and all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
you know,
Look, there's some shit segments we just don't want to watch.
Yes.
And by the way, it kind of helps that you got the spoilers, knowing, hey, this is a shit segment. I'm like, I'll watch some of it and see if I agree. And then if it starts and it's like, yeah, this is a shit segment, I'll zip through it. But it does happen, so it is what it is. Yeah. Look, so lots of things in the WWE. Send to tappedoutpod@gmail.com. What's your highlights, big news? If we didn't cover them, those were kind of our highlights, as far as the big things that happened in the WWE this year. Look, there are more. We're not saying there's not. That was just what made our list. Again, send yours to tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Look, we're going to talk a little bit about AEW, and we're also going to talk about some Impact, NWA, and some other places as well. But before we do that, as always, we always want to jump in and let you know and remind you about our sponsors, jmartinandcompany.com, pressure washing, window cleaning, all that, gutters, all that good stuff. Look, you can find them on their website, jmartinandcompany.com, or find them on Facebook, J. Martin and Company. And like I said, look, it's not just residential. They do commercial as well. Look, I can't recommend. They've done my driveway. They've done my house, my gutters. I mean, they've done my mother-in-law's house. Cannot, and I repeat, cannot, express how, much I can recommend. I just can't recommend them anymore. They're the best. jmartinandcompany.com. Myron, it's almost time to do your house, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, I was not prepared for today's advertisement. I thought it was the betting one again, so I was going to sing Kenny Rogers the Gambler in the background. But I do like that, Jamie. Even though he's taken all of my cruel spice, he's a fine gentleman and he's a fine pressure washer. I would use him for all of my stuff if I could only remember where my house is located.
Also, make sure you're checking out our friends over at Libsyn.com. Look, everybody, we talk about podcasting. I saw some people mentioning on social media, talking about doing a podcast. And I'm like, look, we're, by the way, I don't say that we're an expert. We are not experts in that sense, but we are more than willing to help. My first suggestion is go over to our friends at Libsyn.com, use the promo code TAPPED, sign up and get up to 2 months for free for the podcast serving. And look, they will distribute your shit everywhere. That's the easiest, best thing. It's just it's so easy. And I highly, highly recommend them. Libsyn.com, use the promo code TAPPED and get up to 2 months for free.
If you want to do it right, do it the way Nick did it, because he did his research. He went through this, and then he tried something else, and it failed.
It fucked up. You could say it like it was a terrible decision.
Learn from your mistakes. Back to what I mean. You gotta. If it's like science, you perform an experiment,
and all we're trying to do, Myron.
What's that?
Learn from our mistakes and don't make your own.
Yes,
that's what I take. Libsyn.com, promo code TAPPED.
Yes.
All right, man. Well, let's jump into the AEW stuff. Look, lots of big stuff. I'm not going to try to be negative, but it was a very rough year. But we are going to pepper in some really good stuff in there as well.
Has the new car shine worn off in 2023, Nick?
Some. Listen, and I stand by my statement I made to somebody one day was, I think it's less about the shine necessarily wearing off. I think AEW kind of is who they've been for the whole time. The problem was, they were the WWE alternative when WWE was not doing well. Now that the WWE's on fire, now you're comparing them to a hot WWE, not a down WWE. And that's why they're suffering.
They've just loaded up on old WWE talent and became more like...
I wouldn't say old X, but yes.
But they become more like old, like suffering WWE. And not continue to play to their strengths.
Well, it's WWE. You're either, like, Bischoff always says, you're better than, less than, or you're different than. And if you're looking a lot like them, you're either one of the two. And right now, you ain't better, so you're being classified as less than. Yes. I think that right there says it all of why they are where they're at. But, again, it wasn't all bad. Some of the stuff, man, they were snake bit. There were some things like, I was a huge fan, and I was telling you about it for weeks. The MJF Adam Cole bromance thing, the segments were hilarious. They were funny. They were a good team. I thought they probably had a great story. They were heading down that path. I still stand behind the thing. I think he eventually would have been the devil. May still be, by the way. Maybe why it's dragging out so long. They're trying to wait for him to at least get to a part where he can come back. Adam Cole being he. Lots and lots of great stuff. I thought the story was phenomenal. They couldn't help it that it was just bad luck that Cole got hurt. That's all. I mean, that's the only thing.
Nick, if you go through all your good points, how many of them are going to eventually involve MJF?
I mean, several. I mean, there are several, but
segments of the show.
I got a lot of stuff.
No, I mean on the AEW show. How many of your positive segments on their show are going to involve MJF?
Well, I mean, you could make the same argument like you were just talking about. Like a lot of stuff revolves around Roman Reigns, and Cody Rhodes. I mean, you could make the same argument. I mean, because I'm going to give you some stuff that I think. By the way, it was tough by the time we got to the end of the year. Who the MVP of AEW was? Some people will say it's MJF, but I think in a minute I'm going to give you a case for somebody else as well.
Okay.
But listen, MJF. Look, obviously at the end, now we're into the end of the year and the free agency of MJF. Look, it's debated now. Like some people are like, no, he already signed. They're milking this free agency thing, and it's going to be an angle. And
I even heard Ric Flair got involved. I heard Ric Flair gave him advice on what to do.
Listen, there ain't. If he's not telling me how to work a match, I don't think there's much advice on in my personal life that I'd ever take Ric Flair's advice on. And I'm not.
I mean, Nick, there's all kind of things Ric Flair knows how to do.
Yeah, but it all involves needing penicillin afterwards. But anyway, so MJF, obviously that storyline's going to be massive for 2024 because technically he's not a free agent until 2024. Time will tell and we will see. But if he's returning, let's talk about returns because how crazy it is that within one calendar year, the high notes in both promotions are going to revolve around one CM Punk. He returned it all out. They launched Collision, supposedly that the show was going to be built around CM Punk and his friends, and the Elite were going to be, the Dynamite would be built around them. There's so much that this spars into. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole of Zasloff being a fan of Punk, and that's why they got Collision, and potentially this is why WWE could end up with Warner Brothers. None of that. We're not going down that rabbit hole, so let's not go there. That'll be maybe next week we'll go down that rabbit hole because there's a lot of stuff to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, that's the only thing I did when I was doing research for the show, which was horrible. I mean, half the stuff I did research for the show involved hearsay from OnlyFans. I wasn't on OnlyFans. It was OnlyFans models. Was just about people leaving AEW. And AEW negative. But they've had some good stuff. But when you get, it's a lot of departures. But I don't think any of them is as big as Punk. I don't think you could stack them up all together and they could be as big as Punk, Nick. Since Cody, nothing touches Punk.
Hey, we'll hold that. We'll come back to that because I still argue one that I think is larger. We discussed it in the weeks past, but we're going to come up to it again. All In was the best and worst day, in my opinion, for AEW this year. It was the best in the sense they sold 36,000 tickets on the first day, 81,000 tickets sold. I'm throwing air quotes around. The 72,000 turnstile number, that's the great debate. Look, my argument's this. How many times have we said for WWE, and by the way, I stand behind this. I'm actually one of the few people that stand behind AEW on this thing. If you sold over 81,000 tickets, I don't give a shit whether you showed up or not. If you sold 81,000, you sold 81,000.
Yeah.
If I was Tony Khan and Tony Khan bought some of those tickets so he could argue he had the largest selling, most tickets or whatever, kudos, smart man. He bought promotion. He literally bought promotion.
It's promotion. Promotion's promotion. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Correct. I mean, if he would what did those tickets cost him? If he bought, by the way, this is if he bought tickets, what did it cost him? And could he have gotten that much promotion and that much leg out of now when he goes in front of people for potential TVDs down the road or whatever. He can argue we sold this many tickets. It's the most number of tickets sold for a pro wrestling event ever.
I mean,
He
yeah,
can
and all
say
it
that.
was fees. I mean, whatever ticket fees are at Wembley, and whoever the Wembley the vendor is for tickets is what, $6-7 a ticket, you think?
I don't know. Well, it would have cost. He would have had to buy the tickets. Yes, it would have went back into the kitty, but then there will be taxes, and so it'll be
Yeah.
a little more complex than just
Tax
the
title
fees.
and dock fees.
But whatever. Of course, the worst part of it is in Jack Perry and CM Punk get in an altercation, which about the glass, which leads to Punk's firing at some point. So again, best day, worst day. How is that crazy that's best day, worst day in one day for a wrestling promotion in a year? That's just bananas to me.
Well, I mean, it could have happened to any wrestling promotion, but it just happened to be on a huge scale. That's the problem.
That's correct. So now I do want to argue, Jade Cargill, you said you thought Punk was the bigger, and I've argued this a couple of weeks ago, that I felt Jade Cargill is bigger loss than Punk, because I think Punk's gone within a couple years. He's not on TV anymore. I think this is his last run. Cargill has the potential to be there, and I'm not saying she will, because if she can get into acting and all that kind of stuff, she may be gone like pretty quick. But she could potentially be a 10 or 15 year talent. Does that make sense?
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying long term, there's much more money to be made on Jade Cargill than CM Punk.
Long term, maybe. Short term's not even close right now, and I'm not even.
I mean,
by the way, I'm not. Even...
sales. I mean, we go from the fact that LA Knight was the highest grossing merchandise sales in WB this year, and then all of a sudden Punk shows up, and Punk's out like the 2 to 3 of the top 10.
Yeah.
And then it's yeet, 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 which I thought they were, unless that guy that Stephen P. New represented got a good deal on the yeeting. I mean,
I like that it was blurry. The new shirts are blurry. I like that. That's funny.
There's a black, white, and blue yeet shirt in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, the yeet is that yeet.
Yeah. So Cargill's out. She's not the only one. This is the kind of this is kind of the hard part. You're talking about Danielson announces that the clock is ticking on his retirement. Sting announces that he's announcing his retirement. Yeah, I mean, look, 2 big time players are going to be gone. Look, they're still probably going to be around backstage and that kind of thing. So that'll be a plus, but it does hurt that they're gone, in general. I think Danielson, like when he goes part-time, I literally think he's part-time, like at the building part-time. So, the people that show up, I'm going to do these out of order in the notes, Myron, because Adam Copeland makes the jump over. People like, hey, it doesn't make any sense. Why would he do that? There's a lot to be said just wanting to work with your friends, and I'm okay with that. People I know a lot of people were negative on it. I'm not.
But
I totally understand.
When I thought about it, and this is the one thing I've realized. I mean, he's our age, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I see a lot of people, especially men our age, that are not socialized well. And as they've gotten older, do not go out and hang around their friends and do not spend enough time out of the house. And being around people is very important. And I can see where you'd want to go and spend your last few days of your career hanging out with someone you valued from the past. It's important to you, and you understand.
I mean, his kids call him Uncle Jay. I mean, like he literally wanted to go play with his, he wants to go wrestle with his best friend. And I'm like, dude, I totally get that. I totally don't shit on it at all. Yeah. By the way, here's my argument that I teased earlier. Christian is crushing it in AEW right now. And somebody made the argument of like, he is probably doing better work now. And I'm like, he's doing better character work now than he's ever done anywhere.
Well, he was
wrestling matches. Well, I mean, come on, he's not. He's older too, so that's one thing.
He was always a great second fiddle, and let's just be honest.
It's funny. I think that's why he had his Impact run. I think he had to prove to himself that he could be the standalone single guy, and he did, by the way, in my opinion. Yeah. So that Adam Copeland was a big get. It really was. Massively was. Look, Will Ospreay signed as well, but clearly he's not going to start until 2024. Okay. I will say, look, she didn't sign, but Ronda Rousey being on Ring of Honor, at least it gave them a buzz.
Oh
People
God,
talked about it.
thank God. Please, we have friends that work for Ring of Honor. It's a great product. It's always been a great, valuable product for the wrestling business. So much wonderful talent has been forged there, and right now it's stuck. It's kind of floating in its own debris. Something's got to be done with it. Don't mismanage it and just let it sit there. Turn it into your next NXT. You've got people behind it. You can develop that product. Do better with it. Just do better with it. You know you can.
I think they're going to be fine in the grand scheme of things. I think this is the 2024. This is look, they've been around long enough now. I think 2024 is the year we find out who AEW is for the long term. Can they right the ship? Look, a lot of changes are going on, and we'll discuss maybe some of that next week. People that are going out, people, and all that kind of stuff. We've talked about some of that in the past, but tons, and I mean tons and tons and tons of stuff.
Well, you have to remember, I'm like my mother. I worry unreasonably about things I care about. Okay? That's just me. I just hope the best happens for all this.
Yeah. Well, look, we're also going to talk a little bit about the others, not just, the big two. Look, we're both big fans of Impact. And
Yes.
the big plus for 2023, in my opinion, I really like the rebrand. Go back to TNA, go
Yeah.
back to embrace your roots and embrace who you are.
Six-sided ring, though. No.
You didn't like the six-sided ring?
It was just too much, Nick. And you know it.
If the to me, if the wrestlers were okay with it, I'm down. I understand a lot of wrestlers don't like it because of the bumps.
Circle. Squared.
Myron,
circle.
better, less, different.
Well, it was different.
They stood out because it was different. And by the way, that's not the only reason. We make jokes about Impact being the best wrestling nobody seems to be watching. Look, they're on a bad channel. It just is. I mean, and by the way, it's not their fault. It's the company that fucking owns them. So that's why they're on that channel, and not everybody gets that channel. But look, YouTube's there. They have the Impact Plus, all that kind of stuff. But, the different than, I think one of their strengths, by the way, some people don't think it. This is becoming a theme. Better, less, different. The thing I think they're different and the reason they stand out, Josh Alexander, Macklin, and Alex Shelley, those are your champions for 2023. Different than, all, in my opinion, all three.
Yes.
I mean, look, we didn't mean to, and we're not kind of crap on it because we think MJF's probably the best talent they have over in AEW, but in my opinion, he's a WWE style /
He could scoot. You got to realize, if you open a spot, who could you put in there? MJF would fit in the slot. Josh Alexander probably wouldn't.
Right. But they are great. All three of those names are great ambassadors for Impact, TNA, and I think they do stand them apart and make them look so much better. Yes. So kudos. I think it's a good year. I think next year could be potentially a great year for Impact, and I wish there's more people out there, banging the drum for those guys because I think they do a really good job.
Yes.
NWA, look, I'll let you handle it, man.
Thank you, NWA. You've brought back something so valuable to the wrestling world. You've hired so many of my friends. You've given me something back I value. But get out of your own damn way. Take your dick out of your hand. Pull your fingers out of your ears, which is really going to be hard with your dick in your hand. I know that sounds horribly uncomfortable. But quit fucking around, guys. The cocaine stunt was ridiculous. Did you have a TV deal? I don't know. Are you on the app? I hear so. YouTube? Great. But then Billy gets on there and shits on it.
Here's my argument. I mean, I can put it. If any indie promotion that was recording their shows, I mean, we could have them on YouTube in a day. So anybody being claimed like, hey, and by the way, I highly suggest that for indie promotions. But but my thing is that they're, NWA is not supposed to be, an indie promotion. So anyway,
what's wrong with running something on YouTube with commercials?
well, because if they're not getting, I don't know, man.
You don't need a TV deal until you get a TV deal.
Here,
I mean, we shouldn't
reality.
be network executives, Nick. We shouldn't be television producers. But all of a sudden, we look fucking brilliant compared to guys.
Look, here's my problem.
Cocaine.
We don't know if they had a deal with CW. We know they are on the app. I've seen it, obviously. I don't know if they actually had one to be on the channel. And that we don't know for a fact that the cocaine spot messed it up. My problem is the perception of the story is that is what happened, and that has become the reality of it, whether it's true or not.
They've got some of the best people backstage. They've got some of the best people out in the ring. Okay? They should be doing better. To me, that means lack of institutional control. That's my take on it.
Okay. Wow. Quietly drawing, just crushing it. Like, look, for nobody to talk about that Wow Women's show, it's doing spectacular ratings. And
congratulations, Nigel. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials. Remember, I'm an ordained minister. I will do your wedding for free. I would love to. I'm so happy to see you happy. You and your potential bride just seem so happy all over the internet. I could not be happier for you, my friend.
And we're happy, by the way, on top of that it's, look, he's working. He's on commentary.
He's killing it.
Yeah,
he's
crushing it. He's on fire. I agree. New Japan clearly working with everybody these days. Working with Impact. They're working with AEW. Who knows where we, head down that road at some point, right, man?
I see forbidden doors opening all over the place. Is the forbidden door forbidden, Nick? Is that where we're going?
No.
Is it an
not even
forbidden door?
Yeah.
Are we going to get it? Is there not forbidden anymore?
No. Look, before we get to, there's something I want to do. I want to save it.
Don't ask.
Stocks up, stocks down. Wrestlers whose stock went up or down in 2023. But before we do that, we want to play. I was talking about this shirt, our Pro Wrestling Tees shirt of the week. It's not the years, it's the mileage, the grizzled vet. Huck was saying he's got to get him one of these.
Yes.
And I agree, Huck. You do need one of these. So make sure you supporting the show. Pro Wrestling Tees. Buy a shirt over there. It does help keep the show going. Above and beyond the sponsors. Like Lipson.com, Jay Martin and Company. All those guys, man. Look, support the show by supporting our sponsors, man. We'll greatly appreciate it. But
support us too.
Yeah, support us. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Supporting them supports us.
I started to tell Huck and Hanson I'd produce a show for them, but it might be too controversial.
If you're just not on screen, if you're behind it, then nobody would ever know. Just saying. All right, man. Look, the last thing I wanted to go over: stocks up, stocks down.
The Nick Stock Exchange, the ticker for the year 2023.
Yeah. Put us 5 names, that we put on here. Do you want to do ups or downs first?
I like ups first. Let's do one up, one down. How about that?
No, I'm going to go all down. I mean, literally, because, no long explanations on these. Just some short, quick hitters, Myron. Look, I brought him up earlier. Stock up, Christian Cage. I mean,
beautiful choice.
Went from not even working to he's just killing it, basically, over in AEW.
Yes.
He's the father of wrestling. He's the best father in wrestling right now. That's the whole thing.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. I love to see somebody I watched when I was younger continue to succeed because it gives me hope in my old age. Because as I sit here in this chair with a heating pad on.
Dominic, by the way, this is all year, by the way. We wanted to clarify. It wasn't like, hey, somebody got hot at the end of the year. No. Dominic Mysterio went from being literally everybody saying he shouldn't even be wrestling to he was the North American champion. He's in the hottest, Judgment Day and getting just as much heat as anybody.
More heat than anybody. He can't even talk without getting booed. That is so awesome.
Yep.
His pretend girlfriend is probably the greatest women's champion going right now. Oh my God. I could not be happier to see what this kid is doing. I was going to say he made me so damn angry. And then I realized
That's his
That
job.
means he's succeeding.
Yeah.
Kudos.
LA Knight burst out of nowhere, dude. He was literally nowhere, and now he, like you brought it up earlier. At one point, he was the hottest merch seller WWE had. So how crazy is that? I don't know that it gets much high. Your stock can't go up much more than that in 1 year.
Everybody's like, well, he's like a ripoff of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, well, hell, you took the two greatest products they had at one time, combined them together, and put a vest on them and some fancy. Oh, hold on, they wore fancy glasses and vests. Oh wow, it's popular again. Let's run this. Let me talk to you.
I
The
mean,
crowd
look,
loves
here's
it.
what's crazy to me is he's doing a lot of the gimmick he's been doing for years.
Yes.
So it just clicked finally. And I will look anyway. Whole other argument there. The guns over in AEW. Look, everybody can talk all they want. I think these two kids potentially. Everybody's going to say like they're going to have all these other names. I think that their stock has shot from literally being like trainee guys, whatever you want to call it, to now. I think they're right up there at the top. Doesn't mean we think they're the best. I just think where they started to where they are now. That's where they had a massive, massive jump. And Myron, I don't know if there's one any bigger than Trinity Fatu. She literally went when her and Sasha left WWE. We didn't know if she was ever going to wrestle again.
No, I was negative about that whole thing, and I definitely didn't think she was going to be the one that succeeded bigger of the two. But oh my, was I wrong once again, Nick? Ooh.
Yeah, Impact champion, knockout of the year for Impact. I mean, she's absolutely crushing it over there. And kudos, man. That stock is just shot through the roof from where it was. I mean, you would have literally thought this stock's going to just completely just crash and they're going to go bankrupt and belly up. Now she's on fire. So kudos to her, and time will tell. Now for the bad news. Now for the stocks that are down the most this year. Look, I don't know if anybody's fallen, and we could have some arguments. Matt Riddle, dude, he went from literally being Randy Orton, the RK Bro, one of the hottest tag teams. And look, a lot of it was Randy getting hurt, but he was still, they kept him in the mix of.
He's phenomenally talented. He's phenomenally popular. He's funny. He's likable until he wasn't. Until he's accusing some guard at a gate of touching his ding dong.
I can't even wrap my head around how far. Look, and by the way, this is not a shot at MLW. By the way, I'm not saying like, oh, he's fallen from. Yeah, but he still fell from MLW, or he's all the way from. He was a top player in WWE to MLW, and and I'm like, dude, that's just oof, that's pretty brutal. Britt Baker, this is hard to argue. She was the women's division. I'm not saying this is good or bad, by the way. I'm not saying she shouldn't be where she's at. My argument is 2022, she was the face of AEW's women's division. And right now, can't even hardly get on TV, it feels like, from week in and week out.
Nick, is she living the gimmick? Is that what's wrong? Is she living the gimmick? Has she began to believe her own hype? Has she pushed herself?
Don't you
kind of
have to if you're a woman? I mean, just a wrestler in general. Like, don't you kind of have to believe your own hype and push yourself? I think so, but I'm just saying. Look, that's a look. By the way, she's not the only one. You've got. Look, Austin Theory. When Vince was in charge, and look, we can have the reasons as to why he may be falling. He literally went from being like, think about it, a guy beating John Cena, to he's in a tag team with Grayson Waller, which, by the way, is, again, we're not talking about this as like, oh, woe is me, this is where he's at. We're just saying
he's still
where
employed, but he's not in a good a position as he was. So he's at a, I wouldn't mark him off my list as far as investment, but I wouldn't put much money in him.
I think it's a great, you could buy him cheap right now. So I actually might argue that he's just down from where he was.
Buy him cheap.
I'm going to save this other one to last, by the way. I'm going to jump out of order for you. Braun Strowman, I mean, like, he came back, wasn't it, like September of 2022? And, like, what the hell has he done since? Not much, if anything.
I don't remember.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
And
dude,
that's not my amnesia talking. That's just me not remembering
yeah.
because I haven't seen him in a long time. Did he say stupid shit again?
I think he's hurt or something. I know he was doing some PR travel stuff. I saw on the WWE like Instagram or something. He was doing some. He's still employed. I mean, there's nothing.
Hey,
You know.
if you're still employed, not having to work,
Yeah,
amen.
I agree. Last but not least, I thought there might be a little bit of chatter on this one. Ring of Honor, when they were purchased
Oh,
by Tony
Nick.
Khan, there was all the buzz. They were at an all time. They had fallen to a point. Everybody was like, they're going bankrupt. They're out of here. Tony Khan buys it, and the stock just shot through the roof. And then you gotta look. We're not saying they're not relevant. We're not saying that they're not. There's not a lot of great people there. None of that. What we're saying is your stock at the end of 2022, when Tony Khan purchased it, the expectations and the hopes and the dreams were so high. And it's just, look, I don't know that they are better off today than they were, at the end. Financially, sure, they're more secure because he's not going to let it go away. But that doesn't mean that you're not like in a better place.
What's that location Paul Heyman talks about? Not the island of misfit toys, but the Isle of Relevancy.
Yeah.
They are cast adrift, and
Yeah.
somebody needs to catch them. Please catch them and draw them back to the island.
He needs to either a streaming service or a channel or something to pick them up. So
give them Rampage for Christ's sake.
We've been banging that drum so long. I don't even know that. That's what I worry about. They can't even get that pulled off. But listen, Meyer, there was more stuff we wanted to talk about, and I think I'm going to release that list. The superlatives, we had talked about doing it. I put together some of the list, and we were going to work it where. But I think what we're going to do is first we're going to put it up on YouTube.com for all of the members, and over on the Patreon page. Go over and sign up. Those will be there. We may release it later, cut a video later, and do it down the road. We're just kind of crunch for time right now.
Crunch.
But make sure you're liking the page, subscribing, turn your notifications on, all that good stuff. And like I said, become a member and get that stuff like this behind the paywall. Same thing for podcast listeners. Look, we get it. If we cut it, I'll release it as an audio as well, and it'll be released anywhere: Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, anywhere and everywhere there is a podcast platform. We are there. I promise you.
Yes.
Make sure you're giving us that 5-star rating review if you so feel inclined. We greatly appreciate it. Look, what are your thoughts on the biggest stories of WWE, AEW, the others, any of that? Send those to tappedoutpod@gmail.com. We'll go through them. And I usually do pretty good about trying to respond to them as well. That's why I have them go to that separate email, just for that reason. Look, next week we'll do something a little bit special. Maybe it's a prediction year or something like that. We'll figure it out between now and then. Depends on what news breaks this week and what's going on. Any other things big before we get out of here, Myron, that you want to share with anybody?
Do I? I've made my list. I've checked it twice. I was neither naughty or nice. I need to take a nap. What do you got planned for today, Nick?
Work. Believe it or not, Nick has to work today.
I'm on LinkedIn trying to get a job currently. Not right now, but that's what I'm going to do after the show. If anyone needs a large man to come sit in a chair at your location, not to be very active, that would be me. I don't require much. Well, there is a list. I will forward it to you on your request. But thanks, wrestling folks. I thought about this the other day. This has been a wonderful year in what should have been a very difficult year for me. And a lot of it has had to do with my friends in and around the wrestling business who have been there. And I didn't share a lot of my problems, but y'all have been such a wonderful friend network to me and been someplace to go. And Nick drove me to so many shows. And I thank all of y'all. And I hope everyone has a great new year. And I want to thank everyone for being listeners in 2023 and all the years prior to that. Y'all don't know how much we appreciate y'all here at the channel and our subscribers, the people that come up to us at shows and talk to us about what we said and all that kind of stuff. It really makes two old fat guys feel special. Thank you. Um, I look forward to talking to you at the next show. I hope everyone has a happy new year. Go dogs. And best wishes in 2024.
Well, with that, brother, what's the old saying, man? If I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.